ready?
You are.
Observation 1 is the background. The first argument is there have been some vector control on the part of Brazil to attempt to control the Zika virus. However, these are not long-term and nor are they retroactive. The second argument is that Brazil is also focusing on using fumigation in the upcoming Olympics and other large gatherings in order to prevent the spread of Zika to individuals that are coming from around the globe. However, fumigation is bad for a few reasons that we'll get to later, and it is again not retroactive and not able to actually give them time to resolve the virus. That's the plan. The United States federal government should substantially increase its foreign assistance to Brazil to reduce the spread of the Zika virus, the resolution, by giving Brazil all technical assistance for the provision of the Egypti, genetically modified mosquitoes to combat the Zika virus. It's a resolution. The United States federal government should substantially increase its foreign assistance to Brazil to reduce the spread of the Zika virus by giving Brazil all technical assistance for the provision of Egypti, genetically modified mosquitoes to combat the Zika virus. It's really long. There's a copy if you want it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Solvency. The first argument is that the genetically modified insects will be able to absolutely solve. They have functionally a kill switch gene in them. They are the same species of the insects that are causing the spread of the Zika virus. This is not all insects, or all mosquitoes, but is only a subspecies. This genetically modified version of them has a kill switch in which a male is released into the environment to breed with the females to cause basically the species in the region to die off within a generation. Additionally, they would need to have long-term technology, however, advising and funding for Brazil because they only have a small amount of the genetically modified mosquitoes in the status quo and are clearly not being successful because the spread is continuously growing, and also they need advising and funding from the United States because all that they functionally were given was the genetically modified insects from the Biotech Institute that created them, but they were not given long-term advising. The United States is absolutely critical here for a few reasons I'll get to later. The second argument is that the mosquitoes are produced by British biotech company Octs, which is associated with Oxford University. These specific mosquitoes, as I explained above, functionally create a kill switch. This has been used in the past to combat certain diseases such as yellow fever and dengue fever. However, again, it was not retroactive and did not occur every year. It was only used in small-scale cases. It has never had to be used on a large scale as Zika before because the disease has never spread this quickly from this type of mosquito in the past. The third argument is also the genetically modified mosquitoes these have been proven to decrease the natural populations of the mosquitoes spreading the Zika virus by 90% in test cases, the 90 to 99%. Again, that 1% to 10% is the reason why this should still be occurring every single year because there's still a likelihood that the mosquitoes will definitely survive, which is why there should be a retroactive plan to control the population. The fourth argument is that also the mosquitoes genetically modified mosquitoes have been used in the past, as I said above, to solve things such as yellow fever and have been successful in solving it in small cases. However, it is not retroactive, which is why the mosquito populations are still able to develop more diseases in the future, which is why we must keep retroactively allowing for these to exist. This is why the fifth argument is an explanation that the plan would functionally be an ongoing form of cooperation between the United States and Brazil, in which we continuously provide them with the funds necessary and the technical assistance necessary to maintain these genetically modified mosquito populations in order to combat the virus. The sixth argument is that specifically the United States is the best at enacting for this because the CDC already has action plans on preparing the United States to respond if it spreads here. However, this would also assist us more because it would give us access to the genetically modified mosquitoes for the United States to combat it when it spreads to the Americas, but also that the CDC has specific action plans laid out for years within the future to help resolve Brazil's spread of the virus. But additionally, the CDC has shown success in the past, such as preventing Ebola from spreading here, which indicates that they have a great access to vector control. The seventh argument is this is also key to the United States being prepared for the spread that will inevitably come to the United States of America, which is predicted to occur anytime. There are already 3 states that are infected. The eighth argument is also our plan is key to stopping the amount of fumigation that has to occur in March to solve the March in the area in March. But additionally, it's also able to solve for the mosquito spread that is likely to occur during the Olympics when literally people from all around the globe will be in Brazil, which is why now is the key time to act in order to prevent the Zika virus from continuously spreading globally. The advantage? The eighth point is unique. Is the first argument that there are increasing cases of microcephaly, which is a disease that impacts infants that causes their brain to be smaller than normal. This has increased 30 times since 2010, indicating that the number of cases has drastically gone up. This has been found in correlation with increased individuals infected by the Zika virus. The second argument is that no cure exists. There are no vaccines that exist to solve the Zika virus because it is, again, a virus, which means that it is very difficult to kill. And additionally, 80% of individuals that are infected oftentimes don't feel sick, which is why vector control is absolutely critical because we don't absolutely know all people that are infected. The next argument is that now is the key time. The WHO indicates that it expects 3 to 4 million people in the next 12 months to be infected, and all of the Americas except for Chile and Canada because it's too cold for the insects there, according to ABC News, which is why now is the key time to act. But additionally, the fourth argument is that now is also key because it is winter in the United States, which means that the mosquito populations are lower now than they would be in the spring and summer months, which is why now is key to vector control of the Zika, the mosquitoes that spread the Zika virus. The fifth argument is that also that 1.5 million individuals are already infected, which is why now is critical to prevent the larger spread. And additionally, these points the plan solves. The first argument is that we would be able to solve the vector for the spread of the disease, which is why we'd be able to allow for containment. But it also gives Brazil and the international community enough time in order to come up with better, with more long-lasting solutions, such as possibly coming up with things such as cures and other ways to spot the disease. But additionally, it would allow for them to better come up with ways to resolve the sexual transmission of the disease, which is unable to be able to be solved in the status quo. It's only a question of solving the main vector, which is from mosquitoes. And additionally, the next argument is the internal links. The one is that the disease that caused by Zika that affects infants called microcephaly destroys the brain development of these infants. It can cause things from just a slower learning development to extreme cases such as paralysis in infants that basically stunts their growth for their entire life. The second argument is the global spread of Zika is already likely, as I have explained above, which means that now is absolutely critical to act. Also, there is a high risk that the virus could evolve if it continues to be able to spread just infinitely within the future. This puts us at a high risk for things such as pandemics and even superbugs in a world where the virus comes to a place that there's no way for us to ever solve it, which is why now is the key time to act. But additionally, it literally can kill infants as well, which is why it's key to act now. Due to the impacts, the one is that death becomes inevitable because infants are literally dying. I think that baby deaths are probably an impact that we can all agree on are pretty bad. But additionally, the second argument is that also disposable populations rise because these infants are functionally unable to engage in society. They are forced to experience things such as paralysis and stunted brain growth, which means that they are seen as less because of the way that the disease affects them. This means that these individuals are perceived to be disposable populations, and any atrocities can be justified against them. But also, it is absolutely critical to act now in order to prevent the virus from evolving any at all, in order to prevent it from evolving to something that could be far more deadly. So it's absolutely critical to pass the affirmative to allow for a retroactive solution in order to resolve the spread of the Zika virus, so that it doesn't spread to the United States, it doesn't grow in power, and just so that we prevent the global pandemic.
Okay, so it is going to be one off, and then the PMC background page advantage.
Is it a criticism?
Yes.
Just really quick, BK knows this because it had me before. It is my philosophy, so it's nothing new that I'm saying right now.
Okay.
But all advocacies, please repeat twice and at least once slow because I have trouble here.
Always. Yeah. Okay. Is anyone not ready? A is the framework. First, the role of the ballot is to endorse the team that best combats whiteness. The role of the ballot is to endorse the team that best combats whiteness. Second is that whiteness distorts debate because white skin privilege asserts naturalized superiority that forecloses on discussions of oppression and exclusion. This means that white supremacy props up a utilitarian calculus that's exclusionary to revolutionary discourses, which ensures that traditional politics is never challenged and whiteness continues. Third is that this is a prerequisite to your impacts because whiteness structures political relations by determining identity and status of populations based on aesthetic difference. That means that discussing whiteness is a necessary prerequisite to analyzing capital because it forms a discussion of what bodies do and do not count under the state and capital, which means your framework is entirely framed in terms of white bodies and perspectives. So here are the links. First is that the affirmative looks at the slave as a thing of the past and refuses to see how this subject position constructs current politics. American civil society was built on the back of slaves who worked against their will and were rewarded with a 3/5 compromise. And Brazil was the nexus of the slave, the Middle Passage, and had more slaves than anyone else in the world. The legal codification of anti-black discourse makes America do that. So second is that the exclusive focus on Brazil reasserts the disposability of black bodies. The virus has existed in Uganda since 1947, and there have been periodic outbreaks in Central Africa, Republic of Egypt, Syria, Sierra Leone, and Tanzania, and yet the affirmative doesn't address where the black bodies are dying, nor has white civil society ever cared. So third is the affirmative is a calculated response to emergency, and that calculation is what allows white supremacists to determine when to exclude and feign exclusion of the black body in the utilitarian calculus. This is because the fake exclusion always ends up pushing the black body to the periphery. And then fourth is the PMC's use of the federal government as a benevolent actor reinforces the notion of a post-racial structure that renders the United States federal government coherent. This allows the anti-black anti-black violence to continue by implicating white society as a former side base that the federal government used rather than the foundation of the structure that exists today. And fifth is that the affirmative's use of a type of mosquito to bleed into a natural population to infect it and kill it from the inside out is a symbolic representation and emulation of the state's concept that anything different can be threatening.
Another one. The affirmatives plan to just have the United States assist Brazil in doing something, imposes the idea that Brazil doesn't necessarily have the capability to help themselves. And
and this imposes complacency as well, just like they did on the black body in a minute. So next to the impacts, first is whiteness. Whiteness is a system of domination that functions like a quota system whereby persons of color are given a specific plane to in life to construct that image of a post-racial society while still placing non-white bodies in structural violence. Non-whites' agency is seen as passive and thus they are seen as disposable, right? They only have agency when white civil society grants it to them. So B is that this turns the case because structures of whiteness inform political methodologies that help to maintain capital that are built upon the premise that some are privileged and some are not. This just shows how the meritocracy is used to justify the system of profit in the future. Your question?
We'll wait.
Okay. Next is the alternative. The alternative is to burn it down. The alternative is to burn it down. First, there's never been a successful, can you write a copy? First, there's never been a successful revolution against the white plantation system, but the closest event was the revolution of the Haitian slaves in the 19th century. They set everything on fire and overthrew slavery and colonial rule and took back their country. Our alternative is to let that fire burn across the ocean to every corner of white civil society. Second is that this is solving the affirmative because it's no longer allowing these hierarchies to continue, and so we will no longer be discriminating against people who may have had this disease in the past, right? That's obviously a problem with the affirmative. And there would no longer be this hierarchy existing. And then third is that there is no permutation because the permutation is nothing but a rhetorical apology for anti-blackness that downplays lip service to black bodies. And also this doesn't make sense because there's no state in the world of the alternative. We burnt it down. So next, let's go to the PMC background page. So let's look at their first solvency argument, how they're genetically modifying these mosquitoes are giving it a kill switch. This is very symbolic of the way that we think that we can modify the black body in order to better fit in white civil society, so that we think it's okay to feign inclusion. But rather, that just continues to push them to the periphery, and that's not a good thing. Also, the fifth argument talks about how the plan is going to allow for ongoing cooperation. This is just further propping up whiteness, right? Because Brazil specifically was the nexus point of the Middle Passage, and they had literally the most slaves in the world. This is just continually propping up this white civil society that is almost the greatest symbolic version of the white civil society that we're even talking about. Your question?
So is your argument that Brazilians are white?
My argument
Your argument
is
is that by propping up Brazil, we prop up white civil society. Are you whitewashing Brazilians? Is that your argument?
No, I'm saying Brazil was the nexus point of the Middle Passage, and they had the most slaves during that time period. That's the argument. So six is they say that the United States federal government is the best. First of all, this is further propping up white civil society because the United States federal government was built on the backs of slaves, and they were literally only rewarded with the 3/5 compromise, that they're not even a full person. So it's problematic. And also in this sixth point, they say that they give the example of how the CDC kept Ebola from spreading here specifically. They only care about the United States. They want to stop the spread of this virus here, just like they stopped Ebola here. But Ebola, just like this virus, existed in other nations with more black bodies beforehand, and we didn't care about it until it started hurting the United States. This is another example of how they are propping up white civil society. We've done it in the past. We see that as an example. It would be horrible to do it again and just allow this violence to continue. So now let's go to the advantage. Let's go to the third and fourth argument about how now is key for other reasons. So the third one is just that it is key now, but why wasn't it key before, when it was hurting the black body, when it was killing these people, when it was making these infants die that they're talking about? This has already been happening in the past, and they just didn't care about it until it started affecting the United States. Although the fourth argument, the key is key now because it's winter here. This isn't taking into account other places where the black body has been dying since 1947, and we could have done it in one of these 60 winters that have happened there, right? We just didn't care until it affected the United States. Also on their solvency, for their second solvency, or for their first and second solvency arguments. First, they talk about how we need to contain this disease, this virus, right? But they didn't care about containing it when it was in these other countries because they didn't think that it was likely it would spread to the U.S. So white civil society only cares when it's going to affect them. So now we are effectively feigning inclusion because we think we are going to solve this virus and thus protect the black body because they're not capable of doing anything themselves, right? But we only feign this inclusion when it's beneficial for us because we think that it might spread to us. And then the second argument that there's a possible cure. You know that this cure is only be given to the U.S. first, right? You also know it's only going to be given to the rich first, right? Even though the black body has been systematically oppressed and in poverty because of the time that they spent in slavery and that systematic poverty that took place. Also on the internal links, they say that it destroys brain development, but whiteness doesn't care about anyone's brain development other than white civil society, right? They have constantly thought that the black body didn't have the same amount of brain development, and now they only care when it is affecting white civil society. Also, second, they say the virus could evolve. Obviously not. They've ignored it since 1947. They didn't care. And on the impacts, they say death inevitable of babies. This is already happening since 1947. It was just a black body. They didn't care. And they say this increases disposable populations, but we have thought the black body is disposable since the beginning of time.
Okay, the order?
Wait, hold on, what's the status of your criticism?
Okay. The order is going to be the advantage, the background sheet, the solvency arguments. It will then be the alternative. It will then be the link sheet, the framework sheet, and the impact sheet, and I will assign those to the reviewers.
Can you give the order one more time?
Yes, the advantage, the background and the solvency, the alternative sheet, the link sheet, the framework sheet, and the impact sheet. Is everybody ready?
Yes.
Yeah. The negative has already lost this debate because there is no argument as to why burning it down would be able to resolve the Zika virus that is spreading. The status quo, a pragmatic solution is the only thing that's going to be able to resolve for this situation, which means that you will always vote for the PMC. The first arguments are the ones that they make on solvency. They ask why we didn't do this before. The first argument is that Caitlin makes is that this has not spread at the same level, which indicates that this is the reason why we're doing it. Also, it's not a question of whether or not we didn't do it before. It's a question of what we can do now. That's the only thing that we can do. We cannot just have this rearview mirrorism, i.e. we didn't do things in the past, so we shouldn't act now. Just focusing on the past allows Zika to spread in the future. Rear view mirrorism is the dissent to 100% of this. They say the black body has been dying since 1947, but they don't give you an argument that the technology existed to eradicate this disease in 1947. We have just recently begun to accept the technology that is able to resolve this, which means that the only things that we can do is act now to be able to resolve this. Their arguments are shallow. The next argument is that you say you don't care unless it spreads in the United States. We are saying that these levels are spreading across the globe, which is things that we need to be able to solve. Brazil will be a test case to be able to resolve this. You concede that solvency argument, which means you conceded the debate. The next argument, you say that we act like they're not capable of solving this stuff. This is where they make no sense. They say, oh, the United States is bad because we didn't go help them, but oh, if we help them, then we're saying they can't do it for themselves. Which is it? Do they solve it for themselves, or do we go help them? We indicate that with the CDC leadership, we can eradicate this disease in generations of mosquitoes. You vote for the PMC because it actually allows you to do something other than burning it down, which just allows Zika to continue. You say that it's going to be given to the rich versus argument doesn't make sense. We are literally releasing mosquitoes into the population to not be able to affect everyone. And mosquitoes that care how much money you have in your bank account, they probably don't even know, which indicates that they will be able to do this. The next argument, you say that whiteness only cares about the white body. This is ultimately not about the white body. This is about science being able to eradicate disease that literally is harming children. How dare you say that how dare you try to use a metaphor to be in the face of these children dying? The next argument, you say it's happened since 1947. Answer above. The next argument, you say that these deaths are already happening. Yes. You were right. These deaths have been happening, which is exactly why we have to take action now. Your alternative does nothing in the face of this violence. The background. First argument is that you concede that fumigation in March is ultimately going to happen. Fumigation uniquely disproportionately affects populations that are ultimately poor, especially in Brazil, because of the fact that they don't have big structures or big infrastructure on their houses to be able to prevent this, which means that you allow for this fumigation happening, poisoning their air, which means that we are the only ones that are going to be able to stop that, which means that doesn't have benefit to 100% of the PMC. The next argument, you say that it is symbolic modification of the black body. No, this is not symbolic modification of the black body. This is genetic engineering of a mosquito. Do not let them trick you with this metaphor at all. This makes no sense. We're not trying to genetically modify or change the black body. We're not trying to genetically modify or change any humans. We are changing a mosquito population to ensure that it cannot kill humans in the future. The next argument, you say that we're talking about Brazil's ultimate death. This is the Lincoln mission. There are millions of things that we do not talk about within this debate. This is also rearing mirrorism. Again, the next argument, you say the United States federal government was built on the backs of slaves. This argument doesn't make sense in context of the PMC that indicates that we should be able to resolve these questions, and we cannot go back and change that, which is exactly what we have to change. The things that are now, we need to be able to stop the spread of the Zika virus, be able to do this. You indicate that the United States only helped out Ebola when it was there. That is not true. The United States worked with the World Health Organization to be able to prevent this in Nigeria after they had leadership, and they were actually very successful, which indicates you can't do it. Also, you cannot, they have to have research. Research doesn't just come automatically. It's not like we had it in 1947, which indicates that we'd be able to resolve this. Deal. First argument is the permutation. Do the plan and burn it down. Again, do the plan and burn it down. The first benefit is reformism. We indicate there are two types of movements. One is reformism, one is revolution. Revolution is violent reformism utilizes the system to be able to reform it and make it better. Our argumentation is that reformism is ultimately not beneficial because individuals will never join your movement whatsoever because they're too comfortable in their current subjectivity, which means they never burn down the people that you need to join your movement will never do this. Next argument, you focus on whiteness, but that is a wrong focus because you focusing on whiteness is bad because it denies the anti-blackness, which indicates you only look at whiteness, which means that it's just a bunch of white people talking about how they're privileged and not about how their actions are anti-black, which means that you would always lead to the problem. Next argument is WBB Du Bois indicates that your articulation of whiteness is actually not true. Slaves were able to bring over their culture behind the backs of their masters, which indicates that they were still able to do that. Your deontology robs them of their ability to have culture, which indicates that you were just wrong in the history. The next argument, you create a black white paradigm, which excludes individuals like that in American age. You literally whitewashed Brazil and say they are part of white civil society and propping them up as bad. That excludes Latin individuals. The next argument, you don't solve this whatsoever because it's on the meta level, which means that you are never having a pragmatic solution. Next argument is the perm is not an apology whatsoever. The perm is an actuality that indicates reformism is good. Also, if you say the perm is apology, you're also saying that things like the civil rights movement that were led by black leaders were ultimately apologies as well, which means you spit in their face, which means it's probably bad. The next argument, you destroying the state is ultimately bad. Then one, this allows you to spread, which indicates that there's no state to be able to do this. You have no argumentation as to why destroying the state would prevent Zika from spreading, which is the impact of this. Also, if the state is not there, it gets worse because right-wing individuals will be able to take it over. There's no laws to check back the KKK anymore under a world where the state doesn't exist, which means that they're the ones with the guns, and they will be shooting black people in the street with no laws to take them over. This world is worse. Suppose all world is worse. The next argument is you speak for others uniquely. You try to essentialize the back of spirits through your own experience of whiteness, which indicates that you will always speak for others and essentialize their bodies, which indicates that you will never be able to resolve 100% of the criticism. Go to the links now. First argument is a no freedom links existence has to become before essence, i.e. these questions of whiteness and these questions have to come after we actually exist in this type. We will all falter due to Zika, which means we have to be able to take this down before we actually look at the essence of the debate. Also, you deny disableism. Our argumentation is that there are individuals who are uniquely going to have to grow up with disability, and you say helping them is ultimately whiteness, which means you exclude the discussion of disableism, which means that you would always lead to disableism in the future. Indicates that your types of links are ultimately better. Also, as a link term for us to be able to have a net benefit. The next argument, you say that the slave trade in the bill Brazil, we say rear view mirrorism is why we are able to resolve this because acting in the future and the present can actually reverse what we did in the past. The next argument, you say the focus on Brazil is ultimately bad. One, having Uganda one, your alternative does not resolve this, which means that it's an equal risk of link. But two, the disease has never spread to this degree. Also, the technology didn't exist. We would say that we are turn this would at least do a test site for malaria to be able to resolve. So even if we haven't taken big action on malaria in the past, we can do it now because on the mosquito and the research that we can able to use, malaria has literally ravaged Africa in the past, which means that if we lead to a resolution of that, we can actually solve. You say the federal government isolate as benevolent. This is inevitable. We will always group ourselves around a sort of federal government, even if this also it's not a question of benevolence, it's a question of lives being saved by Zika that is ultimately ravaging them. That's what means that this is not true. This symbolic representation of difference is ultimately wrong. Like, yeah, mosquitoes are different than us, but if they're spreading Zika and killing children, I think we should probably stop their generations from repeating the framework. First argument is the roll battle, the counter roll battle for the team who saves the most lives. Again, vote for the team who saves the most lives. This is ultimately going to be beneficial because it allows you to have a weighing mechanism within the debate. Also, it's the only way to have the magnitude calculus to be brought in. Also, endorsing the best team that combats whiteness and not actually access to root causing whiteness is bad focus. We've already made that argument, which means it's a disadd to the rule about. Also, you say that utilitarian calculus is bad. Utilitarian calculus is necessarily good, especially in disease prevention, because we have to be able to calculate the numbers that are ultimately resting on. Also, you use utilitarian calculation when you say that we built it on the backs of these slaves and different things like this. This is utilitarian calculus, which means it's an equal risk of the link. Also, you say it's a prerequisite to your impact. No, the prerequisite is existence. We have to be able to exist to be able to question things like whiteness that are here. You will vote to be able to cause, to be able to destroy Zika in the permutation and the impacts. The next The next argument is focused on whiteness. Ultimately, I've already made this argument flow across this here. The next argument, you say disposable populations are ultimately happening. We indicate you would indicate that you deny intersectionality of impacts which you would never be able to resolve. Also, your impact rhetoric is wrong because you do not have to talk about the intersection between race and gender and disability and all of the other isms that we can talk about how the intersection means that you necessitate the socialization out of existence of the life woman according to bell hooks. When you don't talk about intersectionality, you always link to the anti-socialization and the social death of those individuals, which means that you will always link to this, which the affirmative does not, which means you will vote for the affirmative.
Order is going to be. Yeah. Order is the alternative. Well, it's a brief overview at the top. This is going to be the alternative, the case, in the order of solvency and advantage. Oh shit, I didn't have the framework. Framework, there is overview, framework, alternative, case, solvency, advantage, and then I went. Of course. Overview, framework, alternative, the background solvency sheet, the advantage, the links, and the impacts.
I have a criticism on one page, so just signpost.
Yeah, of course. Goddamn, can I get a warrant out of the MG? Whenever you come up here and you're only reading like 5 different arguments and applying it to every fucking page, you're looking at like 2 different things that they're saying. They're saying that one, we're not solving for the Zika virus, and that we're not like acknowledging that we weren't able to solve for it in the past, but all you're doing is reinforcing the system of white civil society whenever you actually look to the K literature coming out of the LLC that you just completely concede. Go to the framework now. You say that the role of the battle is endorse the theme that saves most lives. However, you accept across the argument that we have in the LLC that type of ideology is exactly the type of justification that the USFG used coming out of the 18th and 19th and 20th century to justify the 3/5 compromise. Your idea of like what exactly to justify a life or what exactly is going to justify a living being as like what is worth one another is it's always going to be the root cause of any sort of individual violence you're going to have. Meaning that your argument about the net benefit like it's the only way mechanism in this round is going to be directly determined whenever you completely concede that the whiteness is always going to change the politics. That is the first argument when you're on framework that you just completely concede you extend across. It's always going to change the politics, and then this ideology of like this who's saving like the most lives is always going to mean that we're never able to challenge the state. That means that your error application is always going to be cyclically affirmative, but also you say it's the best method to combat whiteness. That is bogus. You just use the 3/5 compromise. Just cross by the 3/5 compromise I have there at the top. That's a pretty good method for why you don't combat whiteness. So the next argument, though, you say that we use utilitarian calculus. I beg to differ because we're actually stepping away from the modern system of the status quo and utilizing a new method to question the mechanism in which we were implicating politics coming out of your policy. But more specifically, whenever you extend across the prereq to the impacts, that wasn't just a claim that it's the prereq to all of your impacts. We have the words that are showing how whiteness is always going to be the root cause of any sort of like a value system that you're going to have. Meaning that your analysis is like there's no meaning like you have to like exist first. That's complete bogus because like you're going to exist. This is just a debate round. We have to evaluate how exactly you're valuing and basing your impacts in this round. If you're going to justify your impacts on like who saves the most lives, it sounds pretty anti-black to me. Is there anything else I know framework? On the alternative, first you say perm out of the perm, you cannot you just extend a third argument on the alternative solvency. You can't perm because it's just a rhetorical apology. You're playing lip service to the black body, and it's actually you're playing lip service to the black body. That means that you're not actually serving anything. And this is the same thing as the reconstructed policies that went into place after the Civil War in the United States, where the black body was supposed to be like being held by the USFG, but nothing was happening in the South because of the fact that everyone was so offensive. That is always going to corrupt your perm, but also you extend across there. It doesn't make sense. We burn down the state. That makes absolutely no sense that you can utilize the state whenever it's burned out. But second, the perm's either illegitimate or still includes the PMC's discourse of the international engagement in white civil society because of the fact that you literally just do they plan to burn it down. You are still engaging in Brazil. You're still into the K. But also next, the descent of the perm results in interpassivity, whereby we feel good about the things that we have done to combat white civil society, so we go home and pat ourselves on the back and play video games. But the problem is that we never actually did anything to break anything down because all you did was perm the argument, like assuming like you're going to be able to win this debate round, but nothing is happening unless you commit fully. That is the first argument we have with Haitian slaves and how the only solvency they had was whenever they burned down the state, meaning that you have to utilize every bit of the alternative without the affirmative, or else you do not solve for the alternative. But also next, the descent of the perm, with the perm, we develop a love for the fight that we engage in, thus loving the oppression that anti-blackness is going to facilitate. If they say that the perm is just a test of competitiveness in the black speech, this is in the next speech, then this is especially true because of the fact that the perm is always going to like step away from like what exactly the debate is and only become a debate about whether or not they can perm or not. That is pulling the debate away from the message of the critique is trying to present in this round. But next, the inclusion of the state in the perm is going to be the worst form of totalitarian justification for any sort of economic crisis solvency that you're going to have out of the PMC. Cross-apply all of your analysis you have on the advantage. I'm not going to cherry pick because it seems to be the entire advantage. Where you're talking about like doing this is key to solve back for like just death and like how it's critical to act now. That's all the U.S. analysis will get on the case. Because it's always the only good totalitarian justification for the U.S. state action. Yeah.
Answer the net benefit.
Next on the benefit, you say reformism. But this is the one thing that I was talking about whenever you do not read a war. I'm going to say this is reformism because like we're reforming the system because like the white people talk about privilege. You do not warn out why exactly you lead to reformism. You extend across the argument that I have and why the state is always going to co-opt a movement of reformism and lead to where the only solvency in history is whenever they didn't utilize the state, they just burned it down. The next argument you say is that the slaves brought their own culture. That sounds like a pretty bullshit reason for why you're justifying slaves coming across the United States so they can spread their culture to the U.S. so long as they're working for the people. That avoids the links to the entirety of the case. You were misinterpreting the nuance of extinction. Next, you say that the black-white paradigm because like Brazil bad like excludes like the individual. This is another one to gut check them because of the fact that like we have analysis coming out of the elite level here where we show you why exactly Brazil is not necessarily like the embodiment of whiteness, but they are still linked to anti-blackness policies and how you're not trying to mitigate that. But also next, you say that you say that there's not an apology and like we're just like spitting in the face of a slave. That's not articulated. You extend across out as a rhetorical apology because you're just playing lip service to black people. The same thing as like reconstructive policies out of the Civil War. You don't articulate why exactly you solve for that. You just say you do. The next one we say is that there's no argument why we solve the Zika virus. I would argue that we don't necessarily need to solve the Zika virus. I would argue that the affirmative plan is inherently counterintuitive in your effort to solve the Zika virus because you're reimposing whiteness and you're reimposing anti-blackness in modern politics. But also you said that we don't check the KKK and then like you don't say we don't check the KKK. What are you talking about? We burned down the state. Like we lead to the most effective mechanism to always check back for any sort of form of race because if they impose systems of anti-blackness or impose like an ideology of whiteness, we literally burn that down. What are you talking about? We burn down the KKK. It's an ideology of where when you look in the world of the critique, if it's a better world than the racist embodiment of politics that it is today, you vote negative. I'll take your question at the bottom. You say that we're speaking for others, however, that we're not speaking for others whenever we have the support of the Haitian state from 1997, whenever we're not necessarily we're not speaking for others whenever we're relaying their message. We're speaking for them. We're not speaking like in place of them, right? We're just spreading that message to everyone else. Your question.
So are you saying that the state is the only thing that commits whiteness?
What are you talking about? No, I'm saying that the state is the embodiment of anti-blackness policies.
Like the state is one of the links that we have, but we have several others.
On the case background, you say the first off, you can see that we can see that it'll have because links to net benefit versus solvency. I would beg to differ like Zeke at this point it's not necessarily a debate, it's a debate about whether or not you impose whiteness. If I prove to you that you don't solve for that mechanism, then we already control the root cause of your impacts. But also you say that like you're just genetically engineering mosquito, you completely mishandle the metaphor of utilizing a mosquito to put it into a population to corrupt the population. That is the exact system in the United States in which they label the black body as something inside of what they deemed a normal population that then corrupted it and justified policies against it that led to the 3/5 compromise because they were deemed something different. But next you say that link of omission like you're increasing co-option because like whiteness. That's not a warrant. Don't vote on that. But extend across the Brazil had like the most studies in the middle class. But also you say that like we're changing things now because the U.S. like worked with Nigeria and like Ebola and we didn't have the technology. It sounds like another justification for why you're just trying to like feign inclusion in a sense of how you're trying to justify like not looking at history. What?
They say we should just forget the past happened.
You say that we should just forget the past happened. That is a problem in and of itself. You have to look at the past in order to model the future. That is the politics argument we have coming out of the framework. You can see on the advantage proper. You say that we're not spending. Okay, you said like we're not spending like the same level. You said no. You already did your question. You said we're not spending at the same level. Not like it doesn't allow like future solvency and tech didn't exist in 44, and that it's going to spread globally. Look, this is all the argument of feigning inclusion that we had coming out of the LOC. If you can see it, extend across the question that we asked you that you have not answered of why the United States didn't care about it in 1947. You said we didn't have the tech. That's bullshit. We didn't act in 1947. That's the inherent problem. You said that you solved them for yourselves. You said you were solving for themselves, or like, should we help you? Ask us whether or not what should happen. I tell you that whatever policy we present, it needs to not be in the ideology of whiteness. And that's the solvency there. But also, you said that mosquitoes don't care about money. That's cool. You said that like about the science. You say like science solves disease, like all right, on all your impacts, extend across to the black body, we're disposable first. That goes completely conceded. That means that all of your disposable shit is focus. On your impacts, you say like intersectionality argument. On the impacts.
Yeah, on the impact page they say we don't look to intersectionality.
You said we don't look at intersectionality. I would argue that whiteness is the root cause for why we can't do that because the fact that whiteness is always going to corrupt on the links. The only one I need is that the affirmative calculus is responsible to emergency, leads to the exclusion of the individuals that you concede.
Okay. There is going to be a brief overview. Then we're going to go to the background solvency page of PMC, Advantage 1, and then the K in the order it was read. So framework, links, impact, alternative. Is anyone? Yeah. Is anyone not ready? Okay. UT Tyler GM wins this debate round for a few main reasons. The first is that the PMC is a perfect example of feigning inclusion. This is one of the biggest reasons why you're going to vote them down today, because they are feigning inclusion, saying that we couldn't have done in the past, but we're helping now, and that's all the best that we can do, right? That's feigning inclusion, and it's also what perpetuates the fact that we push the black body to the periphery, because we then become complacent, because we think, we've done enough, we've helped them, we can forget about what happened in the past and just do this now and be happy with ourselves, but that's not okay. Second is that the perm doesn't solve, right? Seth gives some pretty stellar answers to the net benefit of the perm, and I'll go over this when I get to the alternative sheet, but also the alternative does solve, because we are burning down white civil society, we are burning down the psychological things that we have made a norm in the past that cause us to think people are inferior than us, that cause us to do all of these bad things, and also literally what the PMR is going to get up and go for is that, they don't understand how we say that we should help black bodies, and then saying that the USFG helping black bodies is bad. They don't understand the nuance of the criticism, right? Because we say that the black body currently is not involved in literally any of the politics of white civil society, because it has been completely changed by white education and things like that. But then also, when we do feign inclusion, it hurts them more because it pushes them to the periphery. PMR is going to get up and go for the perm. That's a bad idea because they're not winning on that sheet. So go to the PMC background solvency page. Remember the example of how they see something that is different from them, and then they feel the need to try and subjugate that thing. They feel the need to try and change that thing to better fit into white civil society. This is feigning inclusion. They say that using a metaphor is a bad thing, but I don't see why when this is the perfect example. Next, we have to talk about on the fifth and sixth argument about how they are propping up whiteness. They literally tell you that we can't change what happened in the past, so we should just go on and do something else. That is bullshit. We need to look at what happened in the past so that we can stop it from happening in the future. We have to burn down white civil society so we can no longer cause these injustices to happen to the black body and allow them to be subjugated to the periphery, or even worse, used in justify things like a 3/5 compromise, right? Go to the advantage. So, all the examples, or all the answers they read in that last speech on this advantage are feigning inclusion, right? We didn't have the technology in 1947. We could have done something else, right? We could have done that. Also, the technology probably existed before 2016, right? We just ignored it. We are feigning inclusion now because now is when we see that this might end up hurting us. So, just remember on the advantage that they are feigning inclusion, and that they are only helping because they think it will help white civil society not only look better for helping the poor black body, but also because we know that this virus is going to affect us.
That argument is new, that we are doing this to make the white civil society look better. What are you talking about?
I don't think so. I think that's articulated in the criticism, and I think Seth extends across that the white civil society isn't doing this to help anyone other than itself.
I'm sure they're research. That's okay.
Yeah. Okay. We're good? Okay. Now onto the framework of the criticism. Remember the role of the ballot to endorse the team that best combats whiteness. Saving the most lives is very problematic because at the point that the United States federal government can decide what lives do count and which lives don't, that's things that justify the 3/5 compromise. That's a very clear reason why utilitarian calculus is bad. They also never answer why it's bad when we read that in the framework, so I send it clear across. Yeah, they say they're a prerequisite to existence and things like that, but you have to look to how whiteness is structured, like our politics and things today. Yeah.
Also on the framework, just on the case, whenever they concede the black body was disposable first, that seems like justification for our framework.
Yeah, they concede that the black body was disposable first. That's a justification for our framework. So we are clearly all the links right at the point that they are focusing exclusively on Brazil, which was the nexus of the Middle Passage, and they had the most slaves. They just say that we're trying to whitewash Brazil. That's not true because we give you this empirical analysis on how that's happening. So on the impacts, instead, the impact of whiteness, that is a system of domination that functions like a quota system where people can be counted like that, and how this turns the case because structures of whiteness and poor political methodology. So remember, they are not getting the perm on the alternative because reformism doesn't work. They are feigning inclusion, and the only way to solve this is to burn down white civil society so they can no longer subjugate the black body to the periphery.
Okay, order is an overview that I would like you to float on the first piece of paper, which is the background solvency sheet, and then it is the affirmative in order. And then I know that I all flow this case right now, so I'm going to find those there. So I'm actually going to go to the links page first, then the alternative page, then the framework, and then the impacts. Again, it is an overview on the first piece of paper, which is the background solvency sheet, the advantage, the links to the criticism, the alternative, the framework, and the impacts. Okay. Is everyone ready? It is an easy vote for Washburn BK for 3 reasons. One, the rear view mirror is that is positive, but the negative is absolutely bad. It means that it is a net benefit to the owner because it means that we only look at the past. We never look at the ways that we can change the future. We're not saying looking at the past is bad, but only focusing there is bad. Secondly, we've won also because the permutation is key to reformism, considering that they've conceded that the state is inevitable on the links page. I'll get there more in a moment. The third reason we've won is that the alternative is not able to solve the affirmative. They are not able to solve because they are just destroying the state, but also they would be ignoring disableism and a function of their alternative, which means they cannot solve back for oppression, solvency. The first argument I want to extend across is that fumigation is inevitably going to happen, which means that we have to take action now in order to resolve worse implications of the status quo that disproportionately harm poor populations of individuals that live in Latin America. Their alternative does not solve back for this. They just say we don't solve over and over again. Then why did you concede our solvency? You just say that we don't solve back because we're focusing on whiteness. The individuals in Brazil that are asking for our help are not white. They are individuals living in Latin America. Additionally, you posit this metaphor again. You're reaching for links, just saying that talking about genetically modified organisms is definitely a link to whiteness is just essentialist and just essentializing what whiteness actually is. But additionally, I want to extend across that the United States is able to resolve this and future problems. We allow for the United States to work with the World Health Organization to solve issues such as Ebola and resolve these type of problems in the future. It is critical for us to reorient ourselves to the other and learn how to better help them within the future rather than just sitting on the sidelines with your alternative. Advantage? They don't say anything here. Extend across the number 2 argument that they are rear view mirrors, and this is a dissad. Their alternative that we made on case that they do not answer. They only look to the past and don't look at ways to allow for the black body to experience a better life in the future. Also extend across, there is no reason the technology did not exist to eliminate Zika in 1947. They created this like a few months ago or a year or 2 ago. Not only that we still could solve that, but again, also conceded it was not spreading globally, but also the double turn argument that they make that they say that we cannot act because then we create a slaver victim savage. Then they say that we should act. This is a double turn means that there is at least some instances where acting is good, means that you should vote for the affirmative. Extend across the impacts of death being inevitable and our disableism impacts that result in disposable populations. This is not solved by their alternative, which means that you would vote affirmative on a risk of being able to solve for disableism rather than their all that solves nothing but causes bad things. Links. They massively undercover all of our trends here. The number 2 argument is that they deny disableism within our advantage, which means that they just create a new form of disposable population and just create new individuals to build the back to society upon. This means that they are never able to solve it. Additionally, they've conceded rear view mirrorism here. They've also conceded that they whitewash Brazil. They just say, no, I mean, we say that it happened here, but you're saying that Brazil is a functionally white civil society, but Brazilians were functionally slaves themselves, which is something that they are not able to solve. But additionally, we extend across the number 6 argument that we are able to allow for a test case to solve malaria in Africa. They have unanswered this argument not answered this argument as well. This means that we are able to solve a disease that disproportionately impacts individuals that live in Africa. But they have also conceded the number 7 argument that an state is inevitable because we will always group ourselves around a central structure, or aka a state, which means that they would never be able to solve it because you can't burn something down because it will just recreate itself in the future. On the alternative. Extend across the permutation to do both. They say the perm is an apology. Already answered this argument by saying that we are not an apology, but we are a move towards reformism within the future. They say the perm is illegitimate because it's still engaged in Brazil, while Brazil isn't white. I don't know why they make this argument, but additionally they say the perm is passivity, but this is the same as your alternative. Nothing actually happens after this debate round. It's only a comparison of methods. We would contend that our method is better in this debate because we allow for us to interrogate the way the white civil society functions and additionally allow for a resolution to combat disease. And that's when they say that we are in love for the fight. The permutation steps away. The permutation is not a love for the fight. We are looking at reformism. We have solvency examples such as the civil rights movement that engaged in reformism. They didn't just love the fight and love whiteness. They took action to reform the way that the state functioned. And they say that including the state is bad, but that's inevitable. You have to include the state in order to reform it, or else it will constantly stamp out your movement. Additionally, I want to extend across the number 3 argument that focusing on whiteness is absolutely essentialist because whiteness and anti-blackness are not the same thing. Anti-blackness is the focusing on black bodies. Whiteness in general is just essentialist to talk about white civil society, how it impacts multiple individuals of color. This is a reason why they wouldn't be able to solve books. They extend across that they say civil rights movement is just an apology. They spit in the face of individuals such as Martin Luther King Jr. that reform the state, which means they would never be able to solve it. Additionally, they are collapsing the state, which means they can't solve the affirmative, but also that right-wing activists take action. They say we're not the KKK, we burn them down too. But the KKK is not going to just sit by and let you burn them down. They're going to take action against you, but also they stand across the speaking for others, and they say they're relaying the message. Our argument is that you're essentializing the black experience. Not all black individuals have experienced the same type of oppression, which means you're essentializing, you can't solve. Framework. Extend across our old vows to save the most lives. They say this is the ideology of the three-phase compromise, not the world where the affirmative is reforming, which means that we are looking at black bodies in a different way, but essentially extend across that whiteness is back focused, and that utilitarian calculus is key in instances of disease, because we must see how many people are dying and how to solve them, and also that existence becomes before essence. On the impacts, extend across intersectionality, their only answer is that whiteness is the root cause, but again, they're essentializing the black experience, which means that they're never actually able to solve it. Really good too.